Want to do the intro?
Yeah, sure.
Good.
There you are. Just give the clap and we're ready to go.
The clap. It's never good when you give the clap.
That's awesome.
Better than getting it.
Hey everybody, it's Robert Lee from National Fire Radio. I'm here with Jeremy Donch,
Hello?
Tucker Daly, and Stan Kufel from
Oradell, New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Daily.
Tucker Daly. Did it just
You
ring
know,
a
you know why it just dawned on me? First time I met Tucker was on a cul-de-sac on the backside of the Ridgewood Duck Pond.
Yeah.
I think you did the flooring.
No, I own the house.
He owned the
You own
house.
that house on
Yeah.
in there? Oh my God.
I actually went through
Yeah.
those guys.
Oh my
So we're
God.
gonna skip the intro and go
Yeah.
right into
Wow.
it.
Oh my God. Anyway.
I like how before we started rolling here, Tucker was like, "Hey, this is where I know you from," and he just went with it. He was like, "Yeah, all right," and then now it
Well,
clicked.
It just clicked.
How
huh?
many houses I've done in Ridgewood?
no,
It's
yeah,
like,
that's-
oh my
I
God.
may have even
Fair
had a
enough.
Chiefs car at the time, so that could have
Right.
kicked it off.
quite a while.
Yeah.
And
Quite
he
a while
had,
ago.
had a lot more hair on the top of his head.
For
and all
sure.
That, so.
I built a
Yeah.
couple trucks since
Yeah.
then.
I see that.
You couple trucks since then. Yeah, I gave up building
That's
trucks.
funny. All right, did it
So-
click now? You good?
Yeah, we're good.
All right.
Sorry about that.
So here, no. Listen,
good.
Starting with the bang.
This is
Yeah.
how it's going to go the whole night.
Yeah.
You know? So this is fantastic. So, Stan, thank you for being here tonight with us while Rob picks up his phone over here. You know, before we started talking already, and I said, hold on, let's clamp it down, and let's save it for the podcast, and here we are. So we usually talk about first fire, memorable fires. I want to jump into what you brought with you. Seb, I think they can see it on the camera, right? We got a big pile of...
If not, we're gonna throw it up on Instagram.
Yeah,
and
well,
Facebook.
yeah, no problem. We'll throughout we'll talk about it, but
This is one out of a 3-part series that we're doing.
that's right. So Stan, what did you bring with you that is
I
falling apart?
I brought my 1960 scrapbook. And
That's awesome.
obviously, in my mother's side of the family, scrapbooks were really big. And she's probably the one that got me started in scrapbooks. And all I did was start collecting stuff that.
Oh my gosh, look at that.
And there is an article in here, the first article on the super pumper system.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
In Life magazine.
No kidding.
That's all in here. But lately, I've been throwing other.
So
things
is
in
this your career, or is this
This
just
is
things in the fire
just
service
things
that
in the fire
got
service.
you going?
How I got some of this stuff was, I know I grew up around firemen.
Yeah.
On our block of Maple Avenue, there were probably 5 firemen just on Maple Avenue and another 1 or 2 on Genther Avenue. And Jack Culver, who was an ex chief out of our department, would every so often bring in those days a fire magazine was a big deal because there was only like 1 or 2.
Right.
And he would bring one, and I would just take it home and cut it out and start putting things together. And then every so often, whatever I saw.
See the nostalgia in his face. It's like, I remember when that truck hit the line.
Oh yeah, Tucker's eyes are like,
Yeah,
yeah,
new
yeah,
technology.
yeah.
I remember this.
But
Oh my gosh.
there's a lot of things, and you know, I gave you a list of things,
Yeah.
obviously, to talk about.
right.
And we talked before about Kentland and Prince George County and how some of our juniors get their experience today is a big deal.
Right.
And obviously, we don't get it just by sitting in our own department all the time. And the more you can see what other departments do and the fires that they get to go to, sometimes there's a little better experience. When I joined Newark Auxiliary, they gave me one of these coats, a rubber raincoat.
I have one. Yeah.
With the pair of boots I still have because I never wore them. And they gave you a miner's helmet. And the first day I walked into Engine 4, Truck 2 on High Street, which is now Martin Luther King Boulevard.
And what year is this, Stan?
This is 1974.
Okay.
First day I walked in, the officer looked at me and says, look, the first thing you're going to do you belong to another firehouse? And I said, yeah, I do. He says, you're going to get rid of that stuff, and you're going to bring your own stuff to ride with us. I said, oh, that's just what I wanted to do anyway. So I still have all that stuff. And, you know, this is just a compilation of things, Chicago, I mean, things that just got me really interested more and more in the fire service when I was a kid.
So
Remember,
cool.
in 1960, I was only 6 years old. So this is when it was started, and this kid from New Brunswick is probably still got that collection. Here's a fire in Oradell that was underneath Charlie Clover's building on by the railroad station. a car burned up underneath it. But you know, this stuff is just. I even believe. Now this is one of the. A truck like this is what I learned to drive on, which was a 48 LaFrance.
Yeah.
In which you had to lift underneath the seat to put it in pump and all that stuff. There were like 8 different steps to operate the truck. And then they got rid of this truck. We sold the truck that I learned on to a museum in South Yorkshire, England.
Huh. Is that right?
Somebody, a bunch of fire buffs, bought a combination police station firehouse that was vacant, and they bought our truck and shipped it over in a container. It's still over there. They sent us emails.
We should go there and interview them.
Well, the only
Yeah.
problem
Road
with
trip.
the only problem with is that from London down to South Yorkshire is like a 3-hour ride. So everybody who tells us that they go over there says, you know, it's quite all right. We didn't get there, you know, all that stuff. But it's just
This is
Lenny
incredible.
Haig and all the articles, you know, that were in the paper, and this is the truck right there.
So
So-
I sit here and I look at this.
Oh wait,
Yeah, please.
Freeman. You know Ronnie Freeman Sr., who was the chief of Hackensack?
I don't.
Well, this is his recipe for meatloaf.
Well, everybody needs Ronnie Freeman's meatloaf recipe, don't
So,
they?
you know, stuff like that. Even if it said fireman somewhere,
Yeah,
it
he's
went into
gonna
my...
take a picture.
Hold on, I'm
so-
just gonna take a
I-
picture of that real quick.
I got everything marked. We're gonna take
Well,
pictures of
also,
it.
I'll tell you another story is we still have 2 Freemans still living in Oradell. And they're both daughters. Ronnie moved to Long Branch. He's at somewhere very close to Patton Point, if you know where Patton Point is.
Yeah.
But this is his meatloaf recipe. Yeah, it's a big thing, I tell you. But you know,
So this is really where you got your
Now-
whole start in your culture.
this is a big. This is my first grade fire prevention week. Everybody signed after you got your you did your home inspection in first grade.
This is unbelievable.
Is that before Edith or?
I've been way before
Okay.
Edith. This was done by what insurance company is that? Oh, right here, Hartford.
Yeah.
Hartford Insurance Company was very big in fire prevention way back in the 60s.
And that was first grade Mrs. Milligan.
There you go.
Way to go, Mrs. Milligan.
That's
Enforcing
it.
Home rule.
And you know, there's all kinds of stuff in here. Firefighter school. I mean,
All right, but Stan, look, so let's.
So-
All right,
Yeah.
like this is incredible. So, like, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, we got a junior fire
It's
marshal.
just the junior fire marshal. This is incredible.
You really should be wearing gloves when we probably touch this stuff too.
I know, right?
But so like we gotta like this is great. What was like you started in Oradell?
yeah, I started.
All
I've
right.
always been in Oradell.
Okay. When did you join the department?
I joined the department in 1973 as a junior firefighter.
Okay.
And in those days, remember, to become a regular firefighter, you had to be 21.
Right.
So I stayed as a junior till 21. But in the meantime, to get a little experience, I went with my buddy Brendan Riley, who was the next chief out of Leonia, and we joined the Newark Auxiliary.
Yeah.
You went over to the Ivy Hill Apartments in the basement where the CDU office was. There was a gentleman over there, I can't remember the name right now, but he had it was the disaster area if something was to happen in Newark,
Mhm.
and it was in the basement of this high-rise apartment building. He was the one in charge of signing you up. Fingerprint you, give you an ID card. I still have my ID card. I still have my badge. He gave you the helmet, the rubber raincoat, and the rubber boots.
Mm-hmm.
And then he told you, where do you want to go? And I said, look, we're going to NJIT. That's where we go to school. Here's the Super Pumper article. And I said, well, how about putting me down on High Street at the Engine 4 Truck 2? And that's where we ended up. But
And what year was that, Stan?
that was in 74,
74.
75.
And how long did the civil defense program go for?
It's, as far as I knew, the last person I took down here was in 86, and we were still able to register.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Now, I don't see anybody riding anymore, but,
No.
and they used to have their own drills. They would do them on Saturday mornings. You just had to make so many. You were supposed to keep a logbook, and I did probably 1,000 hours in Newark. And to a point, we had another most of all the juniors in Oradell joined the Newark program. We had a couple of guys that would live there. You wouldn't see them from Friday to Monday morning. They would just stay
That would be me.
all the way through.
Yeah.
So we had, and you remember Engine 7 was a long nose Mac, and we were still hanging on the back step of the engines. Teddy Noah, who was dear to my heart and really got unbelievable experience in Newark. They treated him like he was a Newark fireman. They would tell him at certain fires that, okay, you take the knob, we'll follow you up, and they would let him put it out. So a lot of our guys got a lot of good experience in Newark. Greg Trask, the one I was talking to before, he was also in Newark. I don't remember where he was in Newark. But remember, firehouses were all over the place. And when we were there in '75, the riots were only like 6 years gone.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like, it was a big experience for us. Really big.
So what was your first fire that you went to as a member of one of these departments, whether it be Oradell or Newark?
Well, you got to remember that in Oradell, when I came in as a junior,
Yeah.
we were doing between 80 and 100 calls for the whole year.
Right.
And of those 80 to 100 calls, you might have seen probably 3 or 4 real fires.
Mhm.
Plus, we did a lot of mutual aid, and we're still doing mutual aid too.
Yeah.
Probably basement fire on not East Drive, but it's it's that first street by the Dairy Queen. There was a fire in the basement, and it was like 20 degrees out. But I'll tell you, the experience. I've only told you the experience from my side.
Sure.
The Oradell guys that were older than us, and I'm saying maybe 15 to 20 years older, were part of the New York Fire Department auxiliary system, and they loved that job. They thought it was the greatest thing in the world. They rode with 36 engine and Squad 1, and in those days Squad 1 was just a bread truck, and it was just tools. And guys, they would go to working fires in both the Bronx and Harlem, and they would just be going back and forth. And there are stories that I probably can't tell because, there were just crazy things that went on.
Sure.
Really crazy things. But later on, as we got older and the juniors came about, we got invited also.
Yeah.
And the auxiliary program in New York City, the story that we've heard is that a Palisades Park guy got hurt, and then that was the end of the program. But I've never had that verified. I mean, I can't even verify it myself.
I was just to say, so like for you in Oradell, your first fire was a basement fire, and then like when you were doing the reserve thing in Newark.
Newark was a lot of other things. It was row houses. There were very few high rises, but you ran a lot more. And the coolest thing was that Truck 2 was a tiller. And so it was the coolest thing. And they allowed you to ride anywhere you wanted to. So on the side of Truck 2, we used to hang on the side, and we'd come down Orange Street going sideways, and then they'd pull into the...
That's awesome.
We just had a lot of...
Without a doubt. And I sit here, and I know Rob has a follow-up question, but I just sit here and I hope that the guys that are coming up now, and even myself, I hope that I have that look that you just had for the last 5 minutes on your face, because, no, I'm serious, because Tucker, you have it too. And when you guys talk about, I've been doing it I've been saying now a lot of times, under 25, 24 years, but the guys with more years than that really are senior to me, when you guys tell stories, your faces, the emotion in the story, and how, Stan, you're looking up and you're smiling underneath that mustache, and your eyes are, spinning in incredible memories, that is just, I really hope that I'll have that reminiscing of emotion, and the guys coming up have it too.
What I'm thankful for is I'm really thankful for everybody who has given us the opportunity to do this. I mean, and obviously they all had a certain amount of, we have to keep an eye on these guys, but they all gave us that opportunity, and they taught us a little bit at everything we went to. And we took that little bit that we learned back with us to hopefully give it to somebody else. I mean, one thing you guys have talked a lot about on the show is what did you learn?
Mm-hmm.
And we do that in our firehouse almost constantly every day, especially with the juniors, because they get a sort of sense that I know enough already and I know what I'm doing. And,
You're comfortable.
And I'm saying, well, you're doing circles on the outside of an exterior fire. Let the water do the work for you. And we go through this all the time, and it just like, take a second, think about what you're doing, and let's just do the job if you've learned it right.
Yeah.
And see
Yeah,
if we
I
can learn
think
a little bit more.
yeah.
That's all.
I think you hit that on the head.
But you
though.
guys, you guys do a good job of just bringing that out, because from what I've watched,
Thank you.
people need to.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I mean, but it's this, right? It's telling the stories,
Uh-huh.
and it's seeing the emotion. Like, I hope that a 20-year-old kid watches this and sees you reminiscing for the last 5 minutes about your CD days, and they probably don't even know what CD even meant, let alone like I barely know.
Cross-dresser or something. It's civil defense guys.
Right.
Like it's civil defense.
Right.
Wait, time.
How did he get to be a
Well,
funny guy? What's
How
this?
do you know about cross-dressing?
That's
a whole nother. That's us.
I'm a
That's
lumberjack
all.
and I'm okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But I got to tell you, one of the best. The first time we got invited to ride in New York City was with 36 Engine. 36 Engine, as everybody knows, has been closed down, and the building was just converted into, I think, a community center. But when we rode there that first night, we rode with a guy who eventually would end up being a 40-year member of the FDNY, chauffeur. His arms were absolutely huge, and I can remember standing at the front door. It was August. It was probably about 90 degrees out, and we're standing at the front door of the firehouse, wide open. It was an American LaFrance in the firehouse, which that engine eventually ended up, I think, at Garfield or Hackensack as a reserve. But what happened was a little old lady comes down the block and goes, the gentleman was just stabbed at the chicken place on the corner. He said, and in those days, he said, "Yes, ma'am, ambulance has been called. Don't worry, they'll be here soon." And that, I'm talking like 81.
Yeah.
1981. So what happened was the fire department was not allowed to leave their firehouse to go do EMS. Only the rescue companies and things like that. About 2 minutes later, a police car would pull up, throw the guy in the back of the police car, take off. 20 minutes later, the ambulance would show up.
Yeah.
So what happened is, whenever I rode in New York City, I always stayed up all night. They would always say, "Hey, you want to do the desk?" I said, "Sure, I'll do this." So I'm sitting upstairs, and the window open, and I'm watching what's going on outside. And then all of a sudden, there's all these sirens again. And I'm like, wow, there's something really crazy going on. Guy comes down the next morning and says, "Guess what?" I said, What? He goes, "The guy who got stabbed was taken to the hospital, got patched up, came back, stabbed the guy behind the counter that stabbed him." I was like, wow. That was 125th Street. So, but there were just crazy times back then. It was nuts.
Yeah.
Stab for stab.
Yeah.
Eye for eye. It's a different eye for an eye.
Eye for eyes, that's right.
Sarah, like when you're, because I'm, the only thing that I can relate this to is what we were discussing about before when I wanted to find out what consolidated departments were like. And I went down to Hyattsville and I joined PG County as a fire and EMS volunteer. And it was just, I tell people, because they don't, especially, ones who don't know, and I feel like we're on the same wavelength, but I said it was like a roller coaster. I said, I never did three house fires in 16 hours. I did it there. And I said, I don't know how the guys in Detroit do it all the time.
Well, it was that way in Newark also.
Yeah.
I mean, and some of the weirdest things I remember in Newark is we'd go to a house fire, there'd be a roast, houses burning, and there'd be a transvestite hooker, and the guy would say, "Stay away from anybody on that side of the street. Just don't go over there." I'd say, "Okay, I'll stay here. That's okay with me." And he'd be this 6'4" guy dressed as a woman walking down the street with a short skirt on. I was like, oh, "This is nuts.
Getting the education you didn't get in Oregon,
just
huh?
absolutely crazy." But you even at 54 and 4.
Yeah.
I mean, at 54 and 4, we have the ravioli guy in Oradell, and he had the hook. So boom, come on, we could just go in and ride. So we go in, And within an hour, we're there. There's a taxi cab pulls up, and the taxi cab driver jumps out with a baseball bat and chases the guy around the car for the fee. Right in front of the firehouse. And I'm like, this can't be happening. This can't be happening. And the last night that we rode there, Wanamaker from Nyack, who's in Empire, I gotta get that right, Empire Hook and Ladder, one of the greatest instructors I ever rode with. Because when we went somewhere, he would always say, "Come on, follow me. I'm going to show you what's going on." And we went to one where the smoke is rolling out of this basement place, and it was almost like a parking garage. And what it was a place where people were woodworking, refinishing, and the sawdust caught on fire on the floor. And he goes, "You see what's going on here?" I said, "Okay, I saw enough." I would go back out. So, but there was just crazy stuff all
That's
the time.
wild.
All the time.
I mean, what a story of experience, though, right? I mean, no, because you know what happens.
Well, you got to sort of modify it, though. You can't bring everything you saw right back to Oradell, or we'd be like, "Oh my God, here we're going."
Of course. But I think,
know,
what I like about this, and I sit here and like I said, you know, watching your mannerisms and discussing this, and the excitement that you still bring to this job. Right? So, like, the stories that you've made and the friendships you've had, I mean, every story you just told, you listed a different guy, you know, a different brother that you shared an experience with. And, like, I'm very much involved in the brotherhood. And I think that part of this job is starting to get lost. And I think watching you reminisce and talk about these guys, and if you see these guys tomorrow, it's a hug and a handshake, and you have that story that you share. And I think...
I still see Paul Wanamaker.
Yeah.
He's a retired battalion chief now from the FDNY, and he's still a member of Chelsea Hook and Ladder.
And what's amazing with that is that you see him tomorrow, you shake hands, you have a good laugh, and you have those stories. And what I'm getting at is like, how do you now in Oradell with all these 30 plus years, 40 years, right? I don't want to age you, but all these years you have there, right? How do you instill that excitement into the guys in your Oradell Firehouse now? How do you explain to them that, look at this, guys, I've been doing this a long time, and you're still hopping off the engine with your hook and your can, or hopping off the truck with a hook and a can, right?
Yep.
And that's just the job, but then it's the other part of that job, right? It's the reason why you're here tonight with us.
You know,
it's the reason.
There's a couple of things.
Yeah.
Number one,
Please.
and one of the things is, you know, being now one of the older members of the department, you can only hope that the training that you gave to those people as they were junior firemen at one time really did its job all the way through. And if it did, you're going to be okay. You know, the real key to that is that you can take a step back, and every once in a while, and maybe it might be a blue moon, you might have to say, "You know what, come here." And I learned the hard way a couple of times with even older members when I was a junior lieutenant, was that they would come yelling and screaming on the fire ground. I would say, stop, let's discuss it when we get back. And then that would be the end of it.
Yeah.
And they would understand what I was saying. That's all. Maybe I was wrong in the wrong sense, but at least let's discuss it.
Yeah.
Instead of just yelling and screaming. So one thing I've learned just recently is you can't be a yeller and screamer on the fire ground. There are people, and the ones that I think sometimes fall through the crack a little bit, is they come from another department where they might do things a little bit differently. And it's really hard to bestow on them, if they're going to sit in the front seat, that we need to do things, just communicate it. If we can communicate it properly, we're going to do okay with ourselves.
Right.
And we'll get there. The fire will go out. But we don't want anybody getting hurt. And that's the main thing, is that as long as we can make sure that everybody's going to be okay. Now, one thing we did in Oradell that, I try to let, without being a real nutcase, let the new officers and chiefs and everything else do their plan. Whatever their plan is, put it together.
Let them go.
And let it go.
Yep.
And sometimes we do things that I can't always agree with because, at 18, 19, 20 years old, I was never that first one on the line going in the front door because you had to be the second one.
Right.
And so I said, you know what? If they're going to let them, they got their fire one, they're ready to go, they're 18 years old. I still the thing that sort of pulls me back a little bit is the fact that I gotta just keep a little better eye on them. That's all. They just don't have the same experience that everybody else had in those older days. I mean, especially nowadays where I thought, it's just a lot of running. We're going to carbon dioxide detectors, smoke detectors, and all this other stuff.
Always turning the wheel.
Now I try to explain to them, well, we go to floods too. Well, you go to floods too? What do you mean? Well, we got 3 boats, and we got a dive team, we got a swift water team, we got everybody. You got to understand, we do other things than just go to fires anymore.
Right.
And that occupies a lot of time, especially training-wise.
Yeah, and we've hit on that like so many times, and we just hit on it earlier.
We're all becoming rescue companies instead of
we are
fire department.
Much more diversified. There's no question about that.
Great way to put it.
It's just, and the problem is you need to get everybody up to that same thing. Like I was just telling people in our department about maybe 6 or 8 months ago, OEM, Bergen County OEM offers a course for first responders to do first aid.
Right.
So that if you ever do happen to they need hands at a active shooter, that you can at least provide first aid. And so what happened the next month? We did a first responder first aid course, and that's important today. I mean, today we find that many of the junior firefighters are already EMTs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said.
Yeah, that wasn't that was not popular back when you guys were.
No.
No.
Well, but we couldn't become firemen until we were 21.
Right.
You could be an ambulance corps person at 18.
Okay. Okay.
So that was there, but not that. And
it wasn't
ambulance
real
corps
popular.
people back then burned out real quick.
Well, and
'cause
also-
they went to a lot of stuff, and then they
Today,
go away.
the EMT program, at least in New York, is offered as a college credit class.
Correct.
So, like, there's people at Marist who are like, oh, wow, this looks like, hey, I'll go take it. It's a semester. I'll take it. They take the class, they get the certification, and now, like, what do I do with it?
Now, when I came out as a chief the first time, which was in '90, we had already done away with the junior program. We did away with it because the 18-year-old limit was dropped to be able to be a regular member.
Right.
So we lost all those juniors. And nobody else really wanted to pick it up at that time. So I came out as chief. I said, look, this program's got to get going again, or else we're just going to be...
What year did you start the program originally?
Oh, my goodness. Our junior program in Oradell goes way back to like 1960.
Oh, okay.
I actually have call sheets in the records where the juniors would sign the back of the call sheet. And those guys are 50-year members now.
Wow.
Yeah.
What year you guys were early?
72.
Yeah.
So we started early, but first thing I had to do is rewrite the program a little bit, because now we're dealing with 16 to 18, and that worked out. It worked out okay. I had a couple classes that were really big in our department. There was one that was 9 junior members. Of the 9 junior members, 3 became FDNY guys.
That's great.
Timmy Mahan is now in Division 1. He was a go-getter from day one. Here's a kid, Don Bosco graduate, lived in Oradell, Don Bosco graduate, went to the University of Fairbanks, Alaska to live in a firehouse, but they told him he had to be an EMT first. Took the EMT class, came back to the firehouse, lived in the firehouse.
I've seen that program. I read about that program.
He got 2 degrees, never got a certificate. He sent his mother for his degrees. He was in the process of taking Boston's test when the graduation was. And from there, he took the New York City EMT test, because it was the first test that they were given. And he says, look, if I'm going to have a chance that I'm not going to get in as a firefighter, I'll go in as an EMT and then transfer over. That's what he did.
Yeah.
So
I find, I know my hometown, we've put out a lot of career guys, a lot of stand-up brothers.
Yeah.
That have made names for themselves in
yeah,
business and everything else. And it's a tremendous pride for our department, and for myself, very proud of those guys, because a lot of them came up with me.
All the Bergen County guys.
Agreed.
I mean,
We've put out a tremendous amount of talent over the years.
Because and I guess Nassau County and Suffolk County do also,
Sure.
but Bergen County has been right there.
Yeah.
And hold their own with everybody else. And
But I think those guys are coming from departments that gave them a structure of culture and tradition
definitely.
and love for the job. And if you're a member in a a not so I don't know, dedicated department or someone, it's not instilling at 18, 16 years old. It's not giving you those values that I think a lot of these guys need to.
But also
further.
part of that is how they move out some of their older guys. There are some fire companies that there's not a lot. There are members that are older,
Right.
but they're not active and they're not sitting there and talking to people. Well, in my day, we did it this way, and then it clicks. Oh, if
See,
we
that's
just
why-
altered what we do just a little bit, then we could use both methods, and it comes out like this.
But that's why I've always believed, and that there's always a spot for everybody in the volunteer fire service. It doesn't matter whether you're 80 or 18.
Right.
And now we're down to 14 in our place as the
Hmm.
cadet program. But the cadet program is one of these things where if they need to get that stepping stone going again, that they can start to push it a little bit further. So
Yeah.
what we find
go ahead.
what we find with a lot of that is that it's brothers or sisters of brothers that are already members that are just starting to get into it now.
Yeah.
So, and it's mostly classroom between 14 and
So do you think they mentor each other? Or?
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. They see their brother or sister running out the door and off they go.
And you guys have nothing to do with. I mean, I want to say you have nothing to do with it, but you're not encouraging that. It's just like something that's happening on its own.
Correct. All they do is stop down, get an application, bring it back. And you can tell right away whether they're interested or not.
Right.
I don't believe we've had the success of maybe open houses or having a table at the high school. You still have to do that. But those people that we sign up at those, we see them once and those cases don't come back.
Yeah. What do you?
Our members are the best recruiters we have. We all know that. And because they can do just what we're doing right now, tell what it's all about. And I really do feel somewhat, I think we're lucky in Oradell that the number of former members from other departments that do come to our department. One thing I was tremendously against when it came up to a vote and we changed bylaws was we allow 15 out-of-town members, and we're full right now. And I said, why don't we stop the out-of-town membership thing and try to just concentrate on within the town?
Right.
And it was like I was picking on people who were out of town and
Yeah,
were already
right.
members. And I'm
But-
saying, I'm not kicking you
right,
out.
yeah, exactly.
I'm just saying, it's okay, don't worry about
Right.
it. So, but every one of those have had great. They've been great members to our place.
Yeah.
They really have. I'm not, I don't really care one way or the other if they have a problem with that they don't join the same department that they come from, town they come from.
Yeah, one of the guys at work was in the military, and he said sometimes, because we were discussing group changes one day, he said sometimes you just have to have a change of scenery, and that he's like, and it's just the personalities are there, and they're not gonna. He's like, we have war for a reason. It's because two people don't get along.
Oh, I can understand that.
And he said, so that there should be that ability to kind of.
Yeah. But what was funny was you had to see some of the things that were written after I brought that up. It was like, oh my God, I don't want to read this stuff.
Yeah.
So, because it doesn't matter to me. It is what it is. And we, the funny thing was when we introduced the 15 member rule was actually 10 originally. And the guy who introduced it, everybody thought it was like the end of the world. And then he left our department, went to the one next to us, and became a member over there. And then I said, well, maybe we do need this. We went from we have 50 active members. We were down around 36 or 37. So we said we need to sort of fill this in for the meantime until we get our ranks back up, because we really had a gap when we disbanded the junior program. Until the junior program really got going again, then we took the 10 members, and who introduced the bylaw is I did.
Yeah.
And I said, it was for the right time. It was the thing we needed to do,
Right.
and that's all.
How is Oradell today? I mean,
as I said, we're full right
Right.
now, and we have a juniors program that's probably got about 4 in it right now. And the strange thing is, if you looked at our roster, is that of the 50 members, we're probably 50% junior firefighters from the Oradell Fire Department.
wow.
And the key of that is encouraging them that they need to go get a college education and then come back if you have to if you still want to become a member.
Yeah, I thought it was to live with your parents.
No, one or the other. We're
Shane,
getting
that one's
there.
at you.
We're getting there.
Nice. That's funny. That is funny. I mean, I get it. I mean, we're my area is unique, and you know that, and it's just tough to hold on to them. And they years ago they came out with the incentive program called LOSAB, Length of Service Award, which was to for people not familiar that watch from all over creation, it was basically a retirement program for volunteer firemen that after X amount of years.
But volunteers don't retire here.
Well,
they die.
Well, okay, right. But what I'm getting at is that program took 5 years to be vested into the program,
Right.
And the intent was good. But the problem is this: when you have departments that have a retention and turnover rate less than 5 years, the LOSAP program doesn't work. And so,
Well, it
what
works
I'm
for other reasons, though. We actually, when we went around and investigated all these LOSAPs, was we decided we wanted to write it and get something out of it. And what we got out of it, we encouraged more training. So if you went and got your certification for fire inspector,
right,
you got 5 more points. Everybody
No,
got,
that's great.
everybody
I mean,
got
that's-
a longevity
sure.
to it.
right.
I don't know if it's encouraged any of these people to stay in Oradell any longer.
Right. Agreed.
But
Plus, new members don't even know about this
Well-
thing, and we don't really discuss it anymore.
right.
I
correct.
understand all that. What I
You're
was
right.
getting at though
And
is
they don't know what that money is.
we're
And I said
looking.
it's already paid for one wedding for me. It has.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I said this is great.
Nice.
So, that's what part of it should be used for, and that's we talk about being able to take it out and all that stuff too. So
Yeah.
crazy
Right.
stuff. But whether it's Lincoln or Valak or
No, I get all that, right. And so, anyway, I guess what I'm getting at, though, is, we sit here and quite often we talk about the recruitment and retention and so on. But I think just the fire service in general, and just talking about the fire service in general, instilling the values, maintaining membership. Why do some places, when Rob and I first started this thing at SEBI, back in February, March, we had 1 or 2 departments that we wanted to sit down with. And really go on their turf and get a couple of their senior guys and a couple of junior guys and sit down like a panel and say, why are you guys so successful? Right? Because here's the thing, right? We all know that there's a handful of fire departments that are dotted throughout this, I know this region, but it's everywhere. That hey, Oradell, incredible department, stand-up guys over there. They really got their shit squared away. They really know what they're doing. And they pack the building. They pack the apparatus for calls. They show up on scene. The guys are squared away. What fuels that? And what Rob and I were talking about doing, and we might still do, we just haven't scheduled anything, but find a couple of those departments and sit down with them and say, okay, guys, what's the secret? What's the secret sauce here? Why does it work here? Why is Oradell so good?
But I think as much as Oradell might look like it's real good all the time, it takes work. And
agreed.
That's exactly what we're saying, though. Is
Right.
What's this recipe of this work? That we saw that meatloaf recipe. If I buy the ingredients, right, and put them on the table, meatloaf doesn't happen. I have to actively read that and put it together.
Correct.
And cook it. And
Correct.
that's what that's what we want to know. Is it
We've already
Oradell?
talked about a lot of this.
Sure.
And one of is the juniors program when we rewrote it. We had to encourage people to look. Not everybody gets out of college in 4 years straight, so we added an extra year there. Made the age limit 23. Okay, we had maybe 2 extra years. We encourage them that they have to make 6 drills a year, even if when they go to college, so that during the summertime they do their drills with us, so that they're familiar with anything that we might have changed on them. Plus, they also need to familiarize themselves constantly with what's going on the apparatus and being changed and switched around and things like that. But what they bring back to us is, not my guys are not running out the door to be EMTs, but the juniors are running out the door to become EMTs also. And now what do they have? They have a job. I mean, one of them is riding paid while he's home. So that was his summer job.
Right. Nice.
Yeah. And that's just one part. And I continually tell people that, as much as the volunteer fire service might not think like it's a paying job, there's a lot of things out there that you can make it a paying job somewhere, whether it's fire inspector, fire official, building inspectors, and all that stuff. But you need to be creative. I mean, it's not for everybody, and not everybody maybe wants to be the plumbing inspector in your town. DPW public employees. What happened in Spring Valley is absolutely ludicrous anywhere in this country today, that a mayor would tell the public works employees that they can't go to fires. Because, once again, Spring Valley most likely will become the highest running department in Rockland County. They did 1,000 calls last year. They'll probably do another 1,000 plus this year.
Yeah, and there's a lot of back and forth
But
there.
you need to understand the advantage of that. I mean, like, and then once again, and I don't want to get too crazy because you'll get lots of phone calls, but what happened in Cresskill is just as ludicrous in the other direction.
I don't know where Crisco is.
So there's a lot. So Stan realized we're talking to people all over creation.
All
so
over
they
creation.
don't know what the stories are. But Cresskill was a volunteer department that ended up going part paid. Right? They're not. I'm not overly familiar.
No,
myself,
they're part paid and supplemented with volunteers.
Right.
Yeah.
I think finding the whether it's right or wrong or what's happening in one jurisdiction is wrong or right.
No, I think it's, but
what we were aiming for and gunning for, and what we're looking, and just to bring it back around a little bit, was talking about that secret sauce. And I'm not saying Ordell is the best department. What I'm using you as an example, but what I'm saying is there has to be a way to look at what we're doing and say, this works very well for us. Let's get that word out and share it. Or is it not really a fundamental thing, and it's more just an attitude or a check it at the door, this is how we do it here type? I don't know. And I guess what we're getting at is there's so many unique characteristics, because at the end of the day, it is a social club. I mean, we do the job, but a lot, it tends to be a lot of it.
I think it has to be.
Agreed.
One of the things we try to do is always make it a family thing. Once it fell apart from being the family thing, then it got into its own problems.
Right.
And I didn't want to see that anymore. I mean, during the 60s, and a lot of departments, everybody's going through divorces and all this stuff, and I didn't want to hear anymore, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But, it's not that easy. I mean...
Well, I think the junior programs really help out a lot.
Tremendous.
I noticed that when ours kind of went by the wayside, we still had it, but it was because the state put all those regulations and no one knew really how to decipher them and what can these kids really do.
Right.
So that took away from a lot of it, because when I joined, I mean, pretty much I could do everything except for really get in there and put the fire. I could put the fire out from outside, but I wasn't supposed to go inside and put the fire out. But you could do pretty much everything else. So you need to dangle the carrot in front of the kid, and keep them moving along.
Agreed.
And then eventually...
I find a bigger gap, though, at the operational level. Having drivers during the day is more of a... but there are departments that are now training 18 to 21-year-olds to be drivers. Just so that they have that crutch to be on. But you got to have somebody who's reliable that's...
But you have to also look at it like we trust our 18-year-olds with now.
Yeah.
If they sign on the dotted line and put their hand in the air and the other hand on the Bible, they could be leading a platoon of soldiers into battle. They could be driving an M1 Abrams tank or an Apache helicopter. So, because that was one thing that always got me in the volunteer service was when I was a member of Croft Corners. It was that this driving thing is very serious, and you are not ready. And I drove the end, and the ladder truck was the ladder truck was the Taj Mahal.
It was on the pedestal
of
someday.
It was and they held it up. And when I became a career fireman, and I drove a ladder truck in the city of Poughkeepsie, especially a rear mount straight stick, which we had in the other firehouse, and they were like, "Yeah, this is how you do it." I'm like, "This is actually easier to drive and quote unquote operate than an engine, because I don't have to figure out a pump calculation." 400 feet of 3 inches isn't going to come off of this with a reducer
Right.
and X amount, like, you know, there was
When
no
it gets to the
math.
tanker, it's a little different, but
Yeah,
you know,
right. The tanker was the one that was
tanker's
always the you know,
5.5.
because that's the one that we say, like, hey, engineers, we are gonna. I hope you are awake today. But it was just
True.
it
It's
was
true.
crazy, and I've seen I've seen several departments do it where they take those younger men and women and hold them to a standard and say, this is what you're going to obtain, and if this is the path is reachable because here are the people who have reached the path or walked down it, and they're able to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
one thing we don't tap into enough.
I agree.
In that, and it's getting those kids to understand it, because that's when you bite into the whole pride and ownership thing, and it's nuts. I watched in Hyattsville, we had some guys come in from Westchester County once, and they were going to ride along with us and everything, and they had a couple of the dinosaurs were there. And I knew they were dinosaurs because they walked in, and I heard their feet start stomping on the ground the minute they got in the firehouse, and it was a 19-year-old driving, a 19-year-old tillering, and I think a 20-year-old riding the seat. And then I'm in the back in like ladders or hook and can, and they're looking at me. They're like, "You have gray hair. Like, why?" And I'm like, "Well, thank you for noticing. First off, that's not how we start this conversation. But yeah, what's up?" And they're like, hey, "Why are you not in the front? Like, why are you not driving?" I was like, "Because that's not my role here. My role here is to do this. Like, these guys are more than capable, and
Yeah.
they've laid the groundwork." So I think that's, you know, something that we really
the,
miss
the
on.
carrot's a good idea. It is.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. I mean, because even with my daughter, I try to just let her take her to the parking lot, let her drive around. This is it's the 91 LaFrance. You can't hurt this thing. Just take it nice and easy, and show her how to put it in pump, squirt the booster line, and say, "Oh, that wasn't really that bad."
Right.
And then then they move on, and then maybe someday they remember, "Hey, that wasn't so bad. Maybe I could do that." So, but she's having too much fun in Whitecroft.
Just catching work up there.
Oh my goodness! I mean, almost as much as just in Oradell.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's
Yeah.
been, but it's a lot of running.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, when you're talking, 417 it was the other day, 417 calls already this year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's to be a lot.
not going to be the busiest company in Bergen County, but
Yeah.
Rutherford should be up there with possibly Lyndhurst close behind.
Oh yeah.
And Paramus, if we count everybody in Paramus,
Yeah.
that's another whole story.
Yeah. So what? Here we are, right? So what do you see? I mean, you're not slowing down anytime soon. You're the president of Newark, New Jersey, which
President
is
of
an
New
association
Jersey, New York,
of
yes,
fire departments between both states, right?
Rockland and Bergen, yes,
Rockland and Bergen
correct.
County.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you hear? What do you see? I mean, you're out there. You're very much involved.
Well,
like I said.
like I told you before, sometimes Rockland, being the smallest county in New York State, seems to be somewhat more organized than most of the rest of us sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit easier to get them organized and on one page, but they do a recruitment night, and supposedly is successful. But we've had speaker after speaker come in and talk about, the National Volunteer Fire Service Program has recruitment packets you can send away for and all that stuff. But what I hear is people want to be busy. And in our place, people have stayed in our place, but gone and joined another place. We used to have a bylaw that said you couldn't belong to two departments.
Yeah.
Now they're running all over the place.
There's a law in New York. You can't.
Well, what I think what's misleading, and we know that the study they've done on volunteers dropping in the United States can be a little bit misleading, only because you got guys taking spots in other places, multiple spots. So I think that gives you a little bit of a misleading thing.
Just real quick, Stan, on that. I don't want to come off wrong here, but how do you dedicate yourself to two? I don't know, I have a hard time. I know Rob's a career fireman and volunteers down in Hyattsville and
in Milton.
In Milton. Mm-hmm. I look at that because I'm like an all or nothing type of guy.
Well,
And so
I think most of us older timers are.
And I'm just curious, and maybe Rob can speak to this. I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot by any means, but what I'm getting at is
you're putting me on the spot.
If I'm here, but hey, those guys seem to be getting more, I'm gonna ride in both places. Like,
I don't think it's like that. I think for
so
me,
I don't
talk
think so
about,
either.
okay, so talk about it.
for me, and I I can only speak on myself. Like Fairview is my profession.
Yeah, but that's a job, right?
No, but it
Yeah.
rolls in, right? So
Okay.
like there's the career side of it, which like every 4 days I'm walking in the fire station, and then I belong in Milton because I bought a fire truck from Nichols. Well, not me, the district did, but like. And Alan in the hospitality room was like, "You should join Milton. You live here." Like, yeah, it's not that far. Like, it would be great. I was like, "Yeah, sure." And like, we went over how I got to PG County,
Right.
and I'm involved in these 3 organizations, and I get you're like, it's all or nothing, but the organizations can't handle an all or nothing
Right.
commitment from me because, like, my job says I can't be there for more than 48 hours, and they would kill me.
Okay,
Right.
But the Milton is, we're a small volunteer department running
Mhm.
a handful of calls a year.
okay.
And then in Hyattsville, like your role is you come in that fire station, like there's no home response.
Right.
So you're either
No, I know that. That's unique. Like,
but-
PG County is very unique.
But even if you
No,
even
yeah.
if I had a second department, like let's say
Yeah.
I came down here and joined Franklin Lakes because I'm hanging out with you so much.
Right.
All right, and I wanted to go ride calls with you, or I want to ride calls with Tucker. Like, it's still in my perception, my scope is when I'm here, I am here. What's not going to happen is if I tell Tucker, hey, I'm coming down to the firehouse tomorrow night to ride, and he's like, all right, cool, and then I get an email that there's a firebug running around PG, and I'm like, hey, I know I didn't give you that commitment, but I'm out. Like, there's a guy lighting fires, and I want to go and try to catch them work. And so I think individually, like it's a change in that perception.
See,
and
you know
what your
what's
scope
harder
is.
about the whole thing is the non-fire department side. Is you have a
Right.
responsibility of this week's the chicken barbecue. You're the cook.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I can't be there. I'm riding PG County. It's like, oh, okay.
Okay, so
But-
let's
and
explore
Those
that real
are
quick.
those parts are just as important
Right,
as the
right.
part of being there when the call.
Well, that's
comes
all
in.
part of the family, where the
Correct.
family comes in.
Correct.
And that's the part where I know I fail Milton considerably because I'm not, like, tonight's a Tuesday and I'm supposed to be there, but I'm doing this here, and like there's a lot, like Tuesdays are my, like for some reason the planets just align that
Bless you.
everything has to happen on a Tuesday night, and so that department gets hurt the most as far as me as a member.
Right.
But at the same time, like I'm able to use my side business to run a class out of the firehouse where I give them a considerable amount of the profits,
Sure.
and so like it doesn't make up the fact that I'm not there flipping pancakes or that I don't help out with the lobster bake, but
Yeah.
like I'm like for me it's at least for my conscience I say like, hey, I know that I can provide something for the department and give that to them.
The only other side of this that I think is a little bit of a fallacy is when you have a member that goes and joins another house, that house might see him for all the non-fire or emergency calls, but when the fire comes in my house, he's in my firehouse. And when I need
Yeah.
them to do the cover-up, he's not there. So what happens is it's a fallacy in terms of numbers.
Shell game.
And yeah,
It's kind of what
Really?
it's kind of what I'm
Right. So I think,
getting to. I mean,
we all,
and I get it.
yeah, because even back when I wrote in Newark, I wasn't in Oradell,
Right.
but I made sure I was in Oradell weekends, and
Yeah,
I
but-
would take one weekend off. I would take a weekend off, but
Yeah,
I would be there for my meeting and my.
I mean, obviously, there's differences in this conversation, and
Yeah.
it's going down to a department further away to dedicate a weekend or a year or something like that. That doesn't pull away from your everyday duty of like your primary. I get that, but when you're like,
or where you sleep.
Yeah,
Really, that's what it
Yeah,
really comes
right.
down to.
right. But I think like we're at a point where. We talked about this earlier. We talk about, these kids, a lot of these younger guys are pushing themselves to find external training.
They're trying.
And they're trying, right, and they want to go out and experience more so they can become better firefighters because we're not
that
getting
exposure.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Exactly. So maybe joining another department that's running more or something, I get all that. But I think where we lose in that equation is exactly what you were touching on, is the family, the culture, the from the roots, right? You're not watering the roots. You're not there to, right? Or no?
No, but
you're laughing.
I'm not sure
Yeah,
it's
because
watering roots,
well,
but
I think you've already lost that culture though, because when I look at departments, like, and you know, I use Milton as an example. Like we just did the county convention, which was like it wasn't a nightmare, but it was a lot of work. And what did you get out of it? Like you're looking at like other departments around Fairview who do pancake breakfast, and it's like what and there's no kid that I know that's in high school that's like, man, I am so excited about the pancake breakfast.
I get that.
And like, so like, I think that in one way though, like when we focus on that, like we lose, like that ship is, that's the Titanic. It's already struck the iceberg.
Yeah, but I don't.
In a
See,
way.
I don't totally agree with that. I don't totally
I think
agree with that.
they need to learn it also, and eventually
Yes.
they will get to the understanding that that's just as important.
But you know,
Because
right, and you know,
it gets there. Believe me, it does.
it's just it's one of those round and around. We could talk about this forever.
Really,
and there's
it's
culture.
But it's a good
right?
conversation to have, though.
Correct.
Without a doubt.
No
Yeah.
question.
And
about
my thing
that.
is this.
Well, that
is
gets back into that community center.
Correct.
That it used to
right.
Correct.
Correct.
Right? I'm not an advocate of parades. Like I'm not a big advocate of parades, right? And I know some guys are. And guys with more history and years in than I am love the parades. But
You know
what they love about the parades, it's one thing about the community sense, but it's what they really love about the parades, and maybe I'm wrong, it's the brotherhood. It's the before and after and the pride leading up to it.
That
it's
is
not,
exactly correct.
It's not the actual walking down the street in 95 degrees in Class A's. It's the camaraderie of being down the firehouse Friday night, washing the trucks and having a couple of beers, and then after the parade, going up and mingling. And you know, like you, Stan, you know everybody through creation because of things like this. I mean, we've gotten to know.
We have seen departments, and I think a lot of them just took it for fact that things change. But we saw departments that were absolutely ludicrous and crazy about the competition for New Jersey New York parade.
Right.
That was a great parade.
Without a doubt. I remember as a kid
everything-
going to that.
It was what people lived for.
Right.
And for weeks. And I'll tell you, it took us a long time to win the best overall, but when we won that best overall, it was like,
Cloud nine,
oh my
yeah.
God, this will never happen again in our lifetime.
Right.
Maybe.
But now, so here's my thing,
So,
right?
so I just wanted to redirect on something too with
Please.
with what I said about the fundraising stuff at the Pancake Breakfast. One thing that we had in Fairview, because I'm a member of the volunteer fire company, even though I'm a career member in Fairview, to help them with fundraising. They were upset because they had Applebee's gave us a sweet deal that if you sold a ticket for Pancake Breakfast, they would open up the restaurant. You were the servers, and if it was
nice.
$10 a ticket, the fire department kept 8, and the Applebee's took 2 for turning the
Yeah,
lights
cool,
on.
right, yeah, of course.
So
Applebee's has done a great job all over it. I mean,
yeah, and so but they could not get people to sell the tickets, and they were like, "Man, we have all these merit students. Like, what is wrong?" And I said, and I came in one day. I said, "Listen, I think we're going about this the wrong way," and that's what I mean with the pancake breakfast thing. Like, we're not understanding the scope of what the people are coming in. And so I said, and they're like, well, what do we do? I said, we're gonna do 2 things. We're gonna do a trivia night fundraiser, and then we're gonna do a Valentine's Day, it's like a kiss and a rose from a fireman is what the fundraiser was for. And they're like, all right, and they're like, explain. I was like, Wednesday nights are horrible nights in the bar. That's why you have trivia night, because it's like,
Right.
what are you doing Wednesday, Tucker? Nothing? Let's do trivia.
Right.
So we sold trivia tickets, and the kids could get behind that because they were like, wait, you mean tell me if I sell a $5 ticket and I get a wristband and my friends have appropriate identification, they can come down to
Right.
the derby
Agreed.
and drink? And I was
Right.
like, yeah. We made $1,500 on that, and it was the volunteers from the fire company that pushed tickets. And then a few of them were like, hey, we're dating some girls in the sorority. Can they help us sell like 50-50 tickets in the gift baskets? And I was
Of course. Like, I
of course
get
they can.
that. I get
so
that.
that's one thing I think we don't do is that we
we
don't.
don't do enough of it anymore.
Well,
What happens
we don't,
a lot of
we
times,
don't look
we
at
just
that
let it-
box and say like, hey, like
Right, we just let
they're
it
not
go.
going to fit into this hole.
Right.
So we got to like kind of change, and that's what I meant by that.
Okay,
You know?
But a lot of towns around here now just mail out stuff, and because we get so much
Right.
money back,
Right.
we're not
Oh,
doing those
agreed,
things
agreed.
that
Right.
actually take a lot more
Well,
Yeah,
work.
but I was gonna.
but they bring the family.
But let me
Correct.
let me simplify it,
Correct.
because what I was getting at is talking about the parades. It's what Stan enjoyed about it, and you enjoyed about it, right? More than me, because you guys are a few years before me. Was this? You enjoyed the camaraderie, and what did you learn through the camaraderie? Pride, dedication, respect for the equipment, right? So now what happens is
You
we
also
don't
got
we
to
don't
learn a lot more about those members also.
oh, without a doubt, right?
Yeah,
But
you're
'cause
side
they
by
listen-
side with
they
them, and the
listen
guy
up.
say,
But here's the other.
Right.
But here's the other thing, and I'm looking at the very simple things now because we don't do activities like that. We take things for granted, so that when the kid's walking out of the firehouse after a call and the garbage can's overflowing, he doesn't take it out. Right? Now, 20 years ago, there was a more sense of a pride, right? Ownership, pride, right? So maybe the little tasks that brought us all together in being dedicated to the department and the culture of it would fuel the things today that aren't getting done. Like why aren't all the chairs pushed in, or why aren't the stools pushed in, or why are the garbage?
That's also how you were brought up. So when you were at
I
home,
agree,
you
I
also
agree,
did
but-
that. Now you tell a kid to do something, and I'm not talking, my kid or other.
how
but
you tell
a kid,
them? How you tell
that's huge too.
but you'll get this.
He'll learn though.
In a minute,
Right, but
then
yep.
instead of lodging in the back of their head and going, well, in 15 minutes I'm going to do that or at the next advertisement, they just lose it and go on to something else, and it
Right.
never gets done.
I get that, but initiative.
So at home, it's done by their parents or their guardians.
Oh, listen,
And at the firehouse, they think the same thing's going to happen.
right, but if you're instilling, right? So
Yeah.
Well,
we do at the firehouse just like
Yeah.
parents do. We
The-
teach.
The two biggest
Right?
things by us are obviously kitchen committee,
Right.
is one, and the junior or members understand that it's their job to do the cleanup. So their cleanup is important, that it can be done correctly and there are no dishes left in the
And
sink.
that's what you're hitting on with the culture.
And I think
aspect.
that's what,
Yeah.
just
I mean, that's-
once you bestow that on them, they sort of understand where it goes and what they require.
I'm a big initiative guy because here's the
Yeah,
thing:
yeah.
if somebody can't take the initiative to take the garbage out, right, or empty the recycling at the firehouse because the can's overflowing, when I arrive on scene and he's got the OV position, how can I expect him to take the initiative to break the right glass or to make the right entry or to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it all goes hand in hand, right? And so it's how we teach and how the people are, and it's that fine line. And so, I mean, I might be, I don't know, maybe I'm over
Well,
connecting it, but initiative's
see,
huge.
this goes
and,
back to also accountability is part of that, and responsibility.
Agreed.
If you can bring the two of them together,
Mhm.
you're going to have success. But it's getting them to line up and
Yeah.
be part that's the
Yeah.
big problem. You know, as I told you before, I don't want to be a big yeller anymore,
Right.
but I want people to be responsible for what we do.
I agree.
And that comes down to taking out the garbage.
It does. It's the little thing. And listen,
It
I'm
is.
guilty of it sometimes too.
To
and
all
this
you
is
new
why-
guys out there,
Yeah.
take the garbage.
But
out.
it's not that it's not just the new guys. If I take the garbage out and I'm like, hey, hey Sebi, look, man, the garbage overflowing, give me a hand. Like a guy with 24 years in the firehouse is willing to still do that. That impresses upon Sebi or Rob that, hey, this guy, I mean, Jay's been here a long time, like, and he's taking out the garbage. All right, maybe next time I'll smart up, or maybe not. I don't know. I have 4 kids. Like,
that's
trust
Jay's
me,
job.
I wipe my ass as kids all the time. My kids'
Don't
asses
take
all
out the
time.
garbage. It's his job.
I'm just saying. I mean,
No,
it's,
but it's something that happens in Fairview. Is I get because that's one thing I have a lot of pride about is that there are times where, and I was listening to something on FireX talk about it, but like because the guy said he couldn't wash a dish, and if I get a dish and I'm washing it, I'm like it is this, and sometimes I'm just like guys, I can wash dishes, it's okay, but I get that sidebar where all of a sudden they're like, oh hey, what's going on, Rob? What are you up to? And I'm like, oh, I'm just washing this dish. And next thing I got somebody else coming in on the left side, and they're like reaching into the sink, and I'm like, who's touching my hand? And then like that, I'm in the doorway, and they're like, we got it, Lieutenant, it's all right. So like, it's for me to know that when I pick up the garbage, something like that, like people notice it, but it's. So I don't know what we did right there because somehow it's working.
Nice.
it's just one of those
It
things.
does
I don't
come
know.
together,
Yeah.
believe it
Yeah.
or not. I don't think we maybe give it enough credit, but it does come
Yeah.
together. It just might take a couple of times to
You know,
pound
the,
in inside.
the other thing too is, a
Make it
lot
happen.
of times on this series that we've been doing, we're hitting on a lot of the. It's not the same. It's not. We're having difficulty with this, or it's not as enjoyable, or it's not the way it used to be. But at the end of the day, like I want to hit on this real quick too. Is that it's still an amazing profession, and I say profession even for volunteers. Like
I think it's amazing what we accomplish.
agreed.
when we look back at some of the things, and I told you droughts, floods, and fires, there are times where I am just amazed that we were able to put things together in some kind of order, and safety and everything else was involved, and everybody, their training somehow just falls into place, and boom, it gets done. And I was like, wow.
Yeah. But I think,
Wow.
I don't like to sound, because I am a huge, I know we all are, huge proponents of this industry and the importance of firefighting and what, not just the actual, bread and butter operations, but the brotherhood part and the culture and the tradition and everything that we bring forth as National Fire Radio. And I don't want to sit here in our podcast and we always talk about this and that, At the end of the day, we do this because we love it. And the reason why we're here, Tucker, Sebi, Rob, and myself, and having you here and you coming on, is because we recognize that it's still a fantastic job. And it's still an amazing industry, and the brotherhood is still very much alive. And what I've seen since we started National Fire Radio since February of this year, the outpouring of support and the people reaching out, sharing their stories with us, and you coming in and willing to give us some time to sit down in your busy schedule just to talk about your experiences, and then hearing from guys in Texas and other places. We have this one brother in Texas we're going to be going down there in November, and that's a whole big thing. We're going to be Gareth. I mean, this guy is a home run, and he reached out to us, and they love the history and culture stuff, and we're going after it, and we're going to go down there in November, and we're going to do a big to-do down there with them, which is going to be amazing. And so I don't want to sit here and be negative. We love this job.
This was a productive discussion.
This was very productive.
I agree.
Really happy.
But what I guess what I'm getting at is that
we're past the holding hand stage. I like it.
Every time we have this podcast, right?
Yeah.
We always talk about the way it used to be and this and that. But I want to impress upon, especially our younger viewers that are watching and listening to us, that man, there's a lot of seniority here. This freaking job is amazing. And you're not going to find brotherhood like this anywhere else.
That's why we have a fire department softball team. I'm telling you, it's the reason the guys in my firehouse look at me like I have two heads when I tell them, I think the fire department softball team is probably the biggest team we have. When you sit down and you think about it, we yell at each other on the field all the time.
Sure.
And work everything out right there.
Yep.
And then guys will come back and we'll sit down on the bench like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And people will say, well, that softball team is nothing. But I said, look back at all the ex-officers and tell me who was not on the softball team. And they can't.
Right.
So it's like, oh my God.
I get
it. So what do? We watch to see who were the best leaders on the field and who was really a team player. Yeah. And I said, if there's the only two things we get out of softball, and we go 0-11 next year again, I said, that's fine with me.
We're doing okay.
We're doing okay. We know who the next officer is going to be.
Yeah.
and the guys that don't are like, what is he talking about? I said, well,
I love it. I think this episode has been really good because I think we hit on a bunch of stuff that we really never discussed before, and so on. And I am thankful. And Stan, we're gonna start wrapping here, but we've been in it quite a while here, but you're definitely coming back because I need to see scrapbook number
2 more books.
Yeah, I gotta see 70 through 80,
That's
and then
it.
80 through 2000 maybe, and then we're gonna.
I just hope one of them has a cover that says "The Warriors of Stan." Like that.
No, but the joke in my firehouse is the fact that Stan's got everything under his bed.
I love it.
So
I love it. We're gonna wrap with that.
it's
But I will say, Stan, thank you because I thought this was awesome, and
it's a pleasure meeting everybody again.
We'd love to get you back on. I think your stories. We could have. If we didn't change direction, we'd still be talking about the Stan's Warriors of the 70s. We wouldn't even made it to the 80s yet, but
my goodness.
We will certainly get you back on with us.
I told you we can do a whole La France thing too.
I know that, and that's
from
next.
The 28 all the way up to the.
You guys still have the 28?
We still have the 28. Matter of fact,
There
we're
we
in the
go.
process of fundraising right now.
All right, so let's do this. Let's wrap this episode, and then maybe we'll shoot a little after time here, a little extra time on the La Francis. You got time?
Yeah.
You got nowhere to be? All right, perfect. So anyway, Rob, wrap this up.
Let me just get my knee back.
Everybody
going.
from National Fire Radio,
Yeah.
Jeremy Tucker. We want to thank Stan for coming on, and thanks for tuning in. This has been a great episode, and thanks for spending some time with us. Everybody, be safe out there, and we'll catch you all later. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you.